Programming on KALX in Berkeley is made possible by you,
with a little bit of help from
your mom.
Deep Mission.
My name is Murky Logic.
Velvet Einstein.
Placeholder.
Oh, that's right, I'm being Karnak. Okay then.
Tiger Lily.
Microtone,
Mega Soup.
Sparkle Motion,
DJ Twinkle. Imaginary Radio.
Mike Burma.
Surprise. Carolyn. DJ Luna.
Pop goes the weasel.
DJ Donut Monoxide, Penny Royal,
Kinder Cave.
ALX, Berkeley, University of California, and listener-supported freeform community radio. And I'm on KALX, Berkeley, aborting boredom in the Bay Area and
Hello, everyone. We'll try again. Hello, everybody. And thank you for coming out tonight. We really appreciate that. I'm Dr. Ron Raymond, the current faculty advisor of WFSE FM, given the responsibility of carrying on the legacy that Dr. Gary Christiansen started so many years ago. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that in just a bit. We have a great meal provided for you tonight. The great staff will be bringing the food around to your tables, so please don't hesitate. Dig right in and enjoy that as we continue with the program. Gary did ask, he suggested that we collectively pause quietly as a group for a short time to respectfully allow anyone who would like to have a silent prayer the opportunity to do that. So if you join me for a brief time here in silence, I'd appreciate that. All right, thank you. I want to take a moment just to kind of run down some of the history of the radio station under Dr. Christiansen. It's in your bulletin, of course, what we were able to secure from the archives, but I'm sure there's a lot of gaps that Gary could fill in for things that we didn't necessarily find information on that he would just know right away. But a few things, obviously very important, was filing for that 10-watt non-commercial FM license back in March of 1977. And 10 watts doesn't seem like a whole lot. It probably doesn't go very far, right? But it was enough that we were able to establish WFSE on campus, and not just as a jukebox, as Gary talked to so many of us about, but as a community-oriented radio station, right? That was always something that was very important to him. And shortly after we got the 10 watt, the idea developed to increase power and get to the 3,000 watts that we are currently still at today. If you look at July 12th, my birthday, 1978, it's a little later than when I was born, but in any event, that's when the list was submitted to the FCC for some options for our call letters. I don't know if you've looked at those, but WHRE, WEHR, WEDN, WSRE, and WFSE. And I'll tell you what, I just think we couldn't possibly have better call letters than what we decided upon with WFSE. I was at a meeting here about a month ago with Gary, Dr. Thompson, Dr. Gibson, some of our students. We were reminiscing and talking about things a little bit. And Gary said one of the things was that he didn't have his voice on the air very often. It was something that he just didn't want to do. And yet I remembered very clearly, maybe some of you will remember it as well, the promo that he had created where it started out something like people, radio stations have names or call letters. Ours are WFSC, which stands for Fine Stereo Entertainment. And again, you have to think back to the 70s when FM was becoming very popular and stereo was a big deal. Music was moving from AM to FM. But it also stood for Fighting Scots of Edinburgh. And when I think of it today, I still think of WFSE as being We're Fighting Scots of Edinburgh. We may be Penn West now, but we're still Fighting Scots of Edinburgh, and we always will be. Love those call letters. A lot of things under Gary that were accomplished. Some very important fundraising on behalf of UNICEF and Make-A-Wish. WFSE participated in the Intercollegiate Broadcasting System, the IBS, twice hosting regional conferences, and had students attend a panel at the IBS conference in Washington, D.C. Go back to 1985, the Albion tornado went through my hometown, Dr. Gibson's hometown, and WFSE was on the air, able to provide vital information to the community about safety-oriented events and how to respond to that disaster. Likewise, providing updates during Operation Desert Shield and Operation Desert Storm in the early 90s, and programming an award-winning 5-part radio documentary, Paper Chase 91, selected Best in the Nation by the National Broadcast Society Alpha Epsilon Rho in 92, I believe. Some of you probably worked on that. Huge accomplishment. Other things included an exclusive live interview with Bruce Baumgartner from Barcelona, Spain in 1992, the year that he won the gold medal. And of course, a lot of the funding to increase the facilities and the operations of FSE over the years. A lot of students came through the program. A lot of us did. Our lives permanently affected in a positive way by experiencing this opportunity to serve at the radio station. For skill development, the fun, the communicative aspect of being on the radio, and learning so much from the man who we honor tonight, our mentor and friend, Dr. Gary Christiansen. I want to bring it up a little bit to more recent times. Things have obviously changed since we signed on in 1979. Deregulation came along. Corporate entities own most of the stations today. Some of the job opportunities that used to be there are a little bit harder to find today. The technology is vastly different. I remember learning on that audio board that had the little 2 circles on it, and if you pushed one, it would light up red and you were on the air. If you pushed the other, it would take you off the air. They were rotary knobs. Many of you remember queuing up our vinyl albums, and the beginning of every song sounded rough because of cue burn, right, which you run it forward and backwards to get it to timeout. I was talking to Matthew Baum earlier today about having to back time into live programming and how scary that was for us. It's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do if we have dead air? And then those beeps would get on the air, and we'd hear about it later from Gary. We didn't want to disappoint him at all. So the technology today, vastly different. We run on automation 24/7, 365 when the students are not available to be on the air. We also obviously use digital technology for everything. But the options that are available to consumers have changed as well, with Spotify, Pandora, satellite radio, and some of that mystique and the aura of radio maybe isn't there today like it used to be. But I'm here to tell you that we have a great group of students who are still passionate about radio. And I'm going to ask a few of them to come up here at this time. We were at that meeting a little while ago with Gary, and when the students left, he looked at me and he said, you can see it in their eyes. They still have that passion for radio. And sure enough, they do. And I'm going to introduce them to you in just a moment from our current staff. Some of the things that we have done in recent years, during the pandemic, a lot of college stations went off the air. I don't know if you know that, but they were given temporary permission by the FCC to go off to the air. We elected not to do that. We stayed on the air. Our building was, Compton Hall was shut down. It was locked, a different lock. So we wound up getting another key, and we were able to stay on the air 24/7, 365 in order to share information about the pandemic, about health and safety, about how to support the businesses during a tough time. Just last fall, these students were among those who went with me to the College Media Association event, a conference in Atlanta, Georgia. Pretty monumental time for everybody, I think, and they'll tell you, I'm sure, something about that. And just recently, we hosted the Great American Eclipse Watch Party on campus, providing the music and programming, including multiple interviews with Dr. David Hurd and scientists in other states who work with NASA and joined us live on the air to talk about their work and to talk about what they were seeing in the areas where they were witnessing the eclipse. So it was really a pretty significant event for us, something that everybody worked for weeks on, maybe months, and they all did a really great job. So let me introduce to you our current GM, Sophia Elder, our current program director, Aaron Cronin, and our current promotion director, Ben Calmy.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Gary. We are the current generation of 88.9 WFSE. My name is Sophia Elder, and I'm the current general manager, and I cannot express how much radio means to me. Not only being on the air, but the people I've met along the way. I consider everyone who was or is WFSE to be family. For those of you who don't know, my job is to make sure that the radio runs smoothly, but most of all, work together as a team. We take responsibility together, but most of all, we work together to make great things happen, like the Great American Eclipse and like today. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aaron Cronin. I'm the current program director. It's my job. I'm the man behind the radio to make sure to see what we're playing on air is safe, fun, and swear-free. But originally when I joined radio, I just wanted to become better at public speaking. So I never expected to be talking in front of you all here today. Now I really feel like I've blossomed in how much I love being a part of the community, getting to know the people around me, and getting to know radio as a whole. I think it is a great community and opportunity for people to grow and experience something they've never done before. And I feel like continuing this legacy is the only way we can really show how impactful this is. And I've never had an opportunity like this before.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ben. I'm the promotions director, and as my title implies, I help run and promote all of the events that WFSC gets to run. When I heard we had a radio station on campus, I knew that was something I wanted to be a part of. A lot of times we go to college and we go to class, and then we go back to our dorm room, we go back to our house, and we don't talk to the people around us. But having a radio station also gives us a home. It's really a unique opportunity for all of us students to be able to go to a class that we can call our family at the end of the day. And as everybody is sitting here, we are a family. We are 88.9 WFSE. I fell in love with this station just like all of you guys did, and I'm so excited for our future. Later tonight, I'll be up to talk about some of our future events that we're going to have. But next, I would like to welcome the Harbor Creek supervisor, Dean Pepicello, and a news anchor for Erie News Now, Mike Ruzzi, to speak on their experiences at 88.9 WFSE Fighting Scots Radio.
You can sit down. Mike Ruzzi doesn't open for anyone, I can tell you right now. So I'll go first. I haven't had, aside from my parents, I've only had a couple mentors in my life because I'm a politician. Clearly, I know everything about everything. There's no doubt that I'm the smartest. No, you don't like that? There were two in my life. Somebody we're going to honor here, and my pastors, Father James McCormick at St. James. And he said to me about public speaking, and it's good advice for the young ones as well. He goes, I don't care what you say, just do it in a hurry. So we'll do it in a hurry tonight and keep moving. I graduated in 90, and I sat down to try to write some things about my experience here, my experience with Gary. Nothing did it justice. There was no way I could write anything to do it justice. So I'm just going to kind of tell you my story because I think my story is probably a lot of our stories. I was a very much below average high school student, and I took that trend into college. I was very good at getting below average grades. Communications major, and one day thought, I like music. Music's cool. I'm going to try this radio thing because it seems like a lot of students are doing it. It looks like fun. And the minute you walked into WFSE, then in Compton Hall, it was like my life changed. In that instant, it's like I'm home. There's no doubt that this is where I belong, and my life is going to change from this moment on. And I suspect probably a lot of us felt that way. So I enjoyed a couple of years. I did everything that you could do in there, and then I was ready to graduate. I was in my last term, and Gary came to me and said, why don't you stay an extra semester and be the general manager? I don't know if you remember that. But it said stay. And I said to my folks, my advisor wants me to stay an extra term. They go, you want to stay in college longer than you have to and spend that money, by the way? Which wasn't nearly as much as today. And I said, I do. So I did that. And Gary saw something in me, and probably all of us, that we didn't see in ourselves. It's probably your greatest trait. And I was some long-haired kid with below-average grades, wallflower, and for whatever reason, he thought that I could be the general manager in a line of great general managers and that have come after me. So I did it, and to this day remains probably the greatest year of my life, certainly one of them, if not the greatest year. You learn so much in that year that you couldn't learn in the classroom, and the classroom was awesome. Now, there were times I wanted to kill him. Pretty much every time a Radio 1 student had to do their mandatory 3 to 6 a.m. shift and couldn't figure out how to turn on the microphone. Every time. They would call the landline. So we'd have to trudge over to Compton in 10 below weather, 6 feet of snow. I know you youngins don't understand that. We used to have winter here in Edinburgh, and it used to be rough. You're very soft. But we weren't. So we trudged through that, and we did all that. Heaven knows he drives me crazy with his political leanings. Quit sending me pictures of Barack Obama. That's a joke. A joke. Drives me crazy, but we love it. And again, my story is like everybody else's because Gary talks me, it could be any student. Gary talks me into being the general manager means that before I even graduated, I had a job in FM radio. Then it turned to AM talk radio, and then it eventually led to politics. And politics, for me, feels like home, like FSE feels like home to so many of us. So we've kind of come full circle. That's just me. There's so many incredibly successful alumni in this room, all from the tree of Dr. Gary Christiansen, without a doubt. None of this happens to me or probably to most of us without Gary. None of it. My life isn't what it is today without Gary Christiansen. And I'll tell you, it's been, Jim Rumsey and I were talking, this table of the 90s is the greatest. Thank you, we love you. It's great to see so many faces. It's been 35 years. Dr. Christiansen is still in touch with so many of us, still encouraging, still leading, still gently guiding, never negative, always positive. 35 years after his obligation was met and went above and beyond. 35 years later, he still cares about what each of us is doing. What kind of human being does that? It's amazing. Gary has repeatedly said to me he is lucky to be dropped into this life at this time, in this incredible university, at this phenomenal radio station. But Gary, I think I get a room full of people who say tonight that we are the lucky ones. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Ruzzi from Erie News Now, class of 1983. And when I started in the early 80s, we didn't have, obviously, cell phones or computers or anything like that in the classroom. We didn't have Google searches. But to get ready for tonight, I did a Google search on Gary. I found a big one. First one that came up, this is true. It says, Dr. Gary Christiansen escapes prison time in Flagstaff, Arizona for tax evasion. I'm glad you beat the rap and made it tonight. You know, in class, Gary always had great timing. fantastic timing. He would tell us, if you guys are going to schedule a PR event, do it on a Monday. Nothing ever happens on a Monday. Avoid Thursdays when they have the NFL draft going on. Thanks. But it's great to see so many familiar faces, so many classmates. Ron, Mark, Drew, Joe Fott in the back, who was just honored last week, Distinguished Alumni Award winner. Congratulations, Joe. All part of our 79 class. And we, in those days, all trekked to Gary's classroom. And I can't tell you the impact that Gary had on us, and especially me. Because when I arrived in 1979, I had by far the worst Pittsburgh accent you could ever have. I was the shyest person in the Edinboro community. But he worked with me every single day. He had office hours late on Friday afternoon, and when a lot of people left, Dr. Gary Christiansen was there, and he'd work with us every Friday afternoon, along with the late Bob Wallace. I met his son tonight. Those two gentlemen, I would not be here tonight, no question, without their help and their patience, because we would do those office hour sessions every Friday for like 3 years. And I'll never forget one of the first play-by-play games we did, Edinboro at Gannon. And we thought we did a pretty good job. But early on, because Edinboro was playing at Gannon, there were some questionable calls by the officials. And my partner kept going on and on and on about the officiating. Eventually, I joined in. We get back. This was a Tuesday night. We didn't have the review Wednesday morning. It took place Tuesday night. Gary was waiting for us. And we went over the tape for an hour. And he counted at least like 60 times the mention of bad officiating. After that, we never mentioned the officials again. It was all about the score. And speaking of the score, he taught me a lesson 45 years ago that I still use today. It's called a running score. And it was the best thing I've ever seen doing play-by-play basketball or football or covering any NFL game, the running score. Still use it today, and I thank you so much for that, Gary Christiansen. I can go on for hours about the difference he made in our lives and my lives. You know, I'm coming up on 42 years in the business. I wouldn't have had 4 months in the business without Dr. Gary Christiansen. And I know I can speak on the behalf of Gary, many of my classmates, and thousands of speech comm majors. Thank you for showing us the way, for showing so much love, and more importantly, believing in all of us. You are the best of the best, and we thank you for everything you've done. Thank you, sir. Now I believe Matthew Baum is next. Matthew.
Good evening. For a lot of you old schoolers, I'm kind of doing double duty tonight. One of our alumni, Margie Bueno, couldn't make it, and she asked me to read a few words if you wouldn't mind. I'd like to do that right now. I was going to do some editing to Margie's comments, but I felt that wouldn't be fair and it wouldn't be appropriate. So if you don't mind, Gary, I'm going to read exactly what Margie sent. Gary Christiansen is a hero to an army of Edinboro communications graduates who once walked in timidly and terrified into his little WFSE college radio station office. What a motley crew we were. From arrogant, fame-hungry, wannabe DJs to speech comm majors looking for an easy A in the classes. And without any experience whatsoever, we signed up for Dr. Gary's Radio 1 class. and we put on our headphones. The WFSE college campus radio station had just gone 24/7 recently when this was all happening. It was run entirely by the students. Competition for the air shifts and the student management positions was very intense, and Gary had the last say on a lot of it. It was a very hectic heyday of college radio, as we saw with the documentary. But putting students behind a microphone wasn't always pretty, as Mike alluded to just a minute ago. Sometimes there'd be a strange, long period of silence called dead air, or we'd answer the studio phone and forget to turn the mic off, which led to some interesting conversations one-sided. Or we'd play whole album sides because we were too scared to talk. And when we did talk, sometimes questionable words slipped out. For many of us radio students, Dr. Gary was also our faculty advisor. He made sure our main focus was always on the academics and to graduate college, of course. But more than that, he convinced us we were all bound to do great things, whether it was in broadcasting or not. He believed in us. Scores of us can name Dr. Gary as one of the first important influences in our young adult lives and in our college careers. Yet we got to play at the campus radio station, but the biggest lessons we learned weren't about record albums or public service announcements. It was about acquiring confidence. We had arrived with none, but when we walked out, we were fearless, saddled with enough confidence to open doors that changed our lives. Dr. Gary's former radio students include college presidents, television producers, dance club DJs, broadcast technology professionals, voiceover actors, music producers, government specialists, teachers, major market radio personalities, internet radio personalities, corporate managers, radio and television sportscasters, business entrepreneurs, network executives, and many, many more. We're an extremely diverse and successful group of Edinboro graduates, and all of us have one thing in common. We all started out as Gary Christiansen's Radio 1 students. That's from Margie Bourneau-Gore. So as I was preparing a few words, I was remembering Dr. Dye and the little index cards to keep your thoughts together. Edinboro State College, I started in January of 1981 during a big blizzard. And I walked into the FSE, there were 2 feet of snow on the ground. And at that time, the promos on the radio station, we are Edinboro State College, the voice of the Fighting Scots. Then it went to the beat of the borough in the 80s. And now it's Fighting Scot Radio, 24/7. We weren't a typical college radio station. We were 3,000 watts. We had quite a reach, and Gary made it a point to all of us that you are reaching a very large audience. You might think you're not, but you are. Up to a potential 1 million people. You have a responsibility. You have a responsibility and you have a commitment to do the best you possibly can do. We were, and we still are, and I like to use the word we because I feel like I'm still part of WFSE and always have been. We're still the projected voice of Edinboro University. The name may have changed, but Edinboro has not. In the 1980s, we started to come out of our shell, and we started to communicate with the College Radio and Records magazine. We were putting our playlists together and sending them every week. And within 2 years, we went from part of the crowd into the top 20 in the nation of college radio. And that's when new age music, new wave, punk was really prominent. And we were getting inundated with records because of those playlists that were in the College Radio and Records magazine. And that's all because of Gary. He promoted that. He said, yeah, let's do it. and do it every week. And if it wasn't consistent, and I remember once or twice I might have missed mailing it, he was like, you missed mailing it, didn't you? And I'm like, how in the hell did he find out? Because he always had his fingers on the pulse of everybody at the station. But the small labels swamped us. Bands like U2, In Excess, the Bus Boys, the B-52s, the Ramones, all of these breaking bands back in the early 80s were sending us their records. And in that process, WFSE built a reputation, a professional reputation. At one point, we had an anniversary, and I can't remember, I think it was the 5th year anniversary for FSE. Magically, we got a letter from President Ronald Reagan. He was congratulating us on our anniversary, and he happened to impart in that letter his experience as a young radio announcer at a radio station in the Midwest. And all of us were like, wow, a letter from the President of the United States congratulating us. And that wouldn't have happened without you, Gary. That was a very big source of pride for all of us at the time. When I met Gary, it was my first semester, and I wanted to do radio, even though I wasn't a speech comm major at the time. And I met Margie, first time in the radio station. And Gary wasn't there, and she said, oh, you're going to have to make an appointment with Gary to talk to him about being on the radio, but you're not going to do it unless you take Radio 1. I was like, oh, well, I couldn't get into Radio 1. She goes, well, you're going to have to talk to Gary. And at the time, I had a 1 year span in between. I went to the Columbia School of Broadcasting. And I graduated from the Columbia School of Broadcasting, so I was kind of like, oh, I can do this. This is going to be easy. Well, I gave 1 or 2 of my tapes to Gary, and Gary listened to them. A couple days later, he called me into his office, and he goes, you're going to have to do an air check. I was like, damn. So the other person that I met was Kenny Campbell. Gary had Kenny Campbell show me around the production studio how to run the reel-to-reel, how to run the cart machines, how to do different things in the studio. And I cut my audition tape, and I gave it to Gary. And I actually got a shift. Saturday night, 2 a.m. to 4. But I was on the radio. And that started the whole thing, and I actually had shifts up until my graduation in 1985. And Gary was a stickler. When you didn't think he was listening at 2 in the morning, you heard about it if something went wrong. I don't know how you did it, Gary, but wow, that was like, man, you can't pull one over on this guy. You better be on top of your game. With Gary, you had like the old investment commercials that were done by John Houseman. With he would say, "You had to earn it," which you had to do with Gary. You had to earn it. And if you didn't, he let you know it. Very cordial, very gentle. He's like, no, you got to do better. You have to do better. And I think everybody here at one time or another in their college career had that experience, where he would gently pull you aside and say, you got to do better. You can do better. I know you can. And eventually we did. It reflects in what Mike Ruzzi said. I still use a lot of the things that I learned from Gary every day in my job, 38-year career. Broadcast journalism. No doubt. There was one, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but we would have to take articles from the Erie Times, feature articles that were 3 or 4 columns long in the paper, and we had to boil it down to 30 to 60 seconds for the evening news. And you better hit that frickin' 30-second or 60-second mark, or you had to redo it. That was torture, absolute torture, but it paid off. All of the classes that we took in speech comm, and especially the ones that Gary was involved with, influenced us, and we still use it all today. So I am super happy and thrilled that I get to stand up here and tell my professor, my faculty advisor, how much he has meant to me and how much influence he had on me as a young man in my college career. Gary, congratulations, well deserved, it's long overdue, and I love you, and I'm proud to call you my friend.
So I got this notification that they're having a banquet to recognize Dr. Gary Christiansen. Boy, it's been a long time, 40 plus years, and I need to dig out some stuff, see if I can find what I'm looking for. I've got some Dallas Cowboys, Chinna McLean Lancers, Reebok stuff. Erie, I'm looking for it. I can't, wait, is this it? I think this is it. There it is, baby. There it is, the Cape. WFSE 88.9 on your FM dial. There's the Cape. More valuable than any cape that Elvis Presley ever wore. But wait, there's got to be more. Where is it? Can I find it? There it is. There it is. The Holy Grail. Tell you what, this should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There it is. The Captain Flash shirt. WFSE. We're talking vintage 1980s stuff. But there's one more thing. If I'm going to give a message to Gary. Where is it? All right, let's see here. All right, we got the... That's some fancy underwear there. Yeah, that's not it. Oh, the Who. Yeah, I got some pretty cool underwear. That's not it. No. Need one more thing to make this the Invincibles. Well, we're getting close. Let's see if there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Captain Flash. WFSE. Vintage circa 1984. It is now time to put on the outfit, the costume, to the wonder of Dr. Gary Christiansen and all of those great DJs from WFSE back in the early to mid 1980s.
Hi Gary, this is John Evans. I'm in Naples, Florida right now. I just want to check in and congratulate you on this wonderful night and this wonderful occasion that frankly is long overdue. You have impacted the lives of countless students that have attended Edinburgh University over the years, including myself. Back in the mid-70s, I still remember in Compton Hall when we flipped the switch and signed the station on for the very first time. It was certainly a big thrill. And the station continues to do well. The students that are now at Penn West are carrying on the legacy that you really helped to start back nearly 50 years ago. Cheers, Gary. Congratulations and all the best to you. Take care.
Is this thing on? It's crazy how we were speech communications broadcast majors and our kids are better at technology than we are. Gary was such a big part of all of our lives, and tonight we're here to finally get to honor him. Gary, just an incredible, kind, caring human being who happened to be a professor. And he gave us a platform where we could be creative, young adults, and just enjoy being on WFSE. And for that, I'll always be in your debt. my stories over the years. I remember when Kenny and Jamie were just little tykes running around the radio station, and you could see how much joy they brought to Gary, and they were the center of his universe. Back in 1992, a radio documentary we put together was called Paper Chase. It was up for a nationally recognized award in Washington, D.C., and we beat Missouri State and Florida State, which was a big deal because Gary's father had been such a big part of the broadcasting program at Florida State over the years. And I remember after we won the award and the high fives were over and we were done, Gary picked up the phone and called his father and said, "My kids beat your kids." And he was so proud of that. And I'll always remember that moment and being able to share it with Dr. Christiansen. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Gary, for being a lifelong friend, and I love you.
I am pleased to talk about Dr. Gary Christiansen. He was a great professor. He was a friend. And most of all, he was a mentor to me, and I know many, many others who came behind me. You see, I was back in the 70s. Gary wasn't that much older than us at the time that he was our professor. So he was a blast. I could probably spend a half an hour telling stories of Gary Christiansen. We would go to the bar for hotel lunch, and we hopped on the bus to go to Buffalo because we all needed an FCC license. He welcomed us into his home where we would have great team parties. He's just a one-of-a-kind guy, and I am so happy that he is being honored. He truly launched so many of our careers, including mine. I definitely owe him all of what he did for me and what he did for many others. So I wish you well, Gary. Congratulations.
Hi, Matthew Baum here, a.k.a. the Bomber from FSE days back in the 80s, class of 85 here. Gary, I'm so thrilled that you're being celebrated today. It's about time. You've touched thousands of lives, mine included. You persuaded me not to drop out and stay for one more semester, and that changed my life. The skills I've learned there at Edinburgh from you, Dr. Paul and Dr. Dye and Dr. Bob, I use those things every day, even though I'm not in the media anymore. 38-year career, I use my broadcast journalism, persuasion, public speaking, all of those skills, I use those every day, pretty much in one capacity or another. I am so thrilled that you're being honored today. You've touched thousands of lives, and I couldn't think of a better way to show appreciation than through this. Thank you very much, Edinburgh, for doing this for Dr. Gary Christiansen. Love you, Gary. I'm very proud to call you my friend.
Hello, Gary. It's an honor to be able to record this brief message to you today. Wanted to say congratulations on finally being acknowledged by the school. It's way overdue. I'm going to keep my message brief. I've told my two sons the same story. I have a high school senior and I have a college senior. In order to navigate school and life a little bit easier, find a teacher or a professor who loves what he or she does, takes an interest in helping you, excels in their craft, nurtures you, tells you the truth, even if you don't like it, and pushes you to be your best self. And if you can find that person, you're going to go very far. I found that person in you 37 years ago, and I think I've turned out okay. So again, thank you for all that you did to push me in my endeavors, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Hi, this is Christy Nelson, class of 1984, arrived on campus and the studios of WFSE in 1980 and worked through the station until 1984. I thought it would be a great dedication to ask AI, the new technology, about Dr. Gary Christiansen, and this is what it had to say. In honor of Dr. Gary Christiansen, a beacon of guidance and inspiration at Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania, and the nurturing force behind the airwaves of WFSE radio station. With unwavering dedication, you've mentored countless students, shaping minds and futures with your wisdom and passion. Your commitment to excellence echoes through the halls of academia and resonates in the hearts of all who have had the privilege to know you. Here's to your profound impact and enduring legacy. Thank you, Dr. Christiansen, for being a guiding light in education and in broadcasting, and for me in my life. I think AI got it right.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Gary. This is for you on behalf of me. This has been my job ever since I met Gary. I didn't even come to Edinburgh to do radio. I came to be an art major, and I made a good choice. One of my friends had a shift at the campus radio station, and I joined him. And as soon as I entered the studio, I just went, this is all for us? That we can just do this? That's what Gary brought to WNCI, to my radio station. He's so talented, he affected even this one. WFSE. This is why radio still matters in the college setting. You can only go to so many classes to teach you the theory of communication. What WFSE provided was the actual radio station where after the class you could walk in, you can take a shift, and you could fall flat on your face, or you can soar. Either way, you got to learn it. That's why radio stations still matter, and the experience of WFSE still matters. Students, they might not even have a future or even an inkling of what radio is, can have a shift, can learn the consequences of communication, better or worse, be completely articulate or a knuckle dragon. Moron, it doesn't matter. You find that out. And if you think that doesn't have applications in social media, influencers, and all sorts of things, it's a valuable piece. Gary made it happen. And I have to thank you for making this happen. I put kids through college being a moron, clouding for cash. So thank you, Gary, sincerely. And thank you, WFSE. If you're watching from management, don't let this go. Too valuable a tool for you. And I speak for a living.
Dr. Gary Christiansen. You've got Captain Flash here with you, the man with a plan, the jock with a rock, the king of the cosmos, prince of the planets, illuminating your special evening with dazzling delivery, sparkling sounds, and lightning loquaciousness. I want to thank you for coming out, Gary. Myself and everyone else, we just want to show our appreciation this evening for all that you meant to us. I'll never forget the first time I met you. We were in Radio 1 class, and at the end of the class, you gave each of us a 3x5 index card and asked us to write down the kind of music we'd like to play if we could have our own show. You looked at all the cards at the end, and you came up to me and you go, are you serious about this? What is this? I go, yeah, I want to play Christian rock and roll. I ended up doing a Christian rock and roll show on Sundays for a couple of years. Jesus Rock with your born-again jock and your host with the most, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Of course, people around the community thought it was sacrilegious, and yeah, you were probably getting an earful, but I had to be me. Then, a few years later into my communications degree, I got one of those envious AM Edinburgh slots. You guys and gals from the 1980s, you remember, if you could get an AM Edinburgh slot, you were king and queen of the airwaves. That's right, Captain Flash. I believe, Gary, in all seriousness, 1982, 83, 84, I might have been the first oldies DJ in America. Just saying. Anyway, I remember those glorious days of getting vinyl and opening up those albums, and I especially remember Shake It Up by the Cars and the Go-Go's Vacation and all those great albums and putting the carts in the machines, and it was awesome. Those days were the glory days of Edinburgh State College and WFSE 88.9 on your FM radio dial. And then Gary, I also want to say one more thing. Right up there, great picture of the former and beautiful Cambridge Springs Riverside Inn. And it was in 1992, October 20th, 1992, that you were there and you played the cello as Jeannie came down the back stairs, and you were part of my wedding to my wife. It's been 32 years now, and I appreciate that. Anyway, Gary, I want to thank you so much. You're the best, man. Probably my favorite professor at Edinburgh State College. And I know I caused you some big ones now and then. You'd have to have some talks with me, but remember, shh. Don't tell anyone my secret identity, and enjoy the evening. God bless you, Gary.
Gary, we're at that point in the program where we need to hear from you. and get your response to that.
Well, thank you. What do you want me to do? It's impossible to tell you how I feel. This is an overwhelming experience. You made everything possible for me, I believe. I don't say this to very many people because it doesn't happen very often, and I know that. But I never felt like I ever went to work a day in my life. And the reason for that is what you did for me, what you all did for me. I got so lucky to come to Edinburgh. I was as clueless as anybody could possibly be when I finished my master's degree at the University of Florida. My father asked me if I would like to come home for dinner and celebrate my thesis defense, which meant I was done with my master's. After dinner, my dad asked me, "What are your plans?" Clueless. Totally clueless. I had no idea. He said, "Somebody called me from Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, the day before from Edinburgh. Never heard of it. But he had a job, maybe. Would I be interested?" Clueless. But I took the phone number. I called this man's father, Bob Wallace. In those days, we didn't have search committees, or the system did not have search committees. I drove to New York City for some interviews. Somebody else got me in business and advertising and stuff, and I hated it. And it was New York City. So I had a summer job at the National Music Camp at Interlochen, Michigan. And from New York City to Interlochen, Michigan, in northern Michigan, Edinburgh and Mars and Slippery Rock are on the way. So I'm driving my sports car, leaving on a Sunday afternoon from Bleecker Street and Sullivan in New York City. Turnpike, Mars, Slippery Rock, Edinburgh. Drove into town. I went into a gas station, took my wrinkled coat out of the back of my sports car, took a cold wash face bath, and put a double-breasted brown blazer on to meet Bob Wallace and go over to Dr. Jim McKinley's office across campus for what turned out to be a 30-minute job interview. 30-minute. No committee. I was 23 years old. I looked like I was 12. During that interview with Bob Wallace, Dr. McKinley, and myself, Dr. McKinley asked me 3 times, "You do have your master's degree, is that right?" And I assured him I did. And he turned to Bob Wallace and said, "Is this the person you want?" Kind of like a funny look on his face, I thought. And Bob said, "Absolutely." And that was that. McKinley turned to me and said, "We will send you a letter of employment at Interlochen Music Camp. And if you want the job, sign it and send it back. On the letter, we'll tell you how much we're going to pay you." Before I left Florida, my father gave me, he really didn't give advice. He exuded it, but he said one thing. If you ever go to a job situation, they offer you money, never accept the money. I didn't understand that. I said, "Why?" I was living on $1,200 a semester graduate student stipend. $1,200 a semester. Living pretty well in Florida at the time. So I got my letter from Dr. McKinley. It was for $7,600 per semester for the whole academic year, 2 semesters. And I was in my bunk and dorm thing I was living in at Interlochen, and I was flabbergasted. How do you spend that much money in a year? But then I remember what my father said. He said, "Don't take the money." And his advice, the reason for that was, don't ever agree with the evaluation somebody else has of you because you should feel it should be better or higher. So I wrote back $8,000. And they wrote back, "Welcome to Edinburgh." That was 1969. I thought I would be in Edinburgh for a year or 2, maybe. My second semester, I started my doctoral studies at the University of Pittsburgh. That took 7 years, driving back and forth with Bob all the time. Crazy, crazy stories. Then I built a house in Cambridge Springs. You meet a girl, you get married, you have family, and that's life, isn't it? And that's 55 years ago. 55 years ago. And as some of you had said earlier, this kind of stuff doesn't happen too much. And I appreciate that because I taught at Edinburgh for 40 incredible years. I've been retired 15. And you're doing this for somebody, and I'm still alive. Think about that. That's incredible. That's just incredible. A couple sub-stories about the weekend in Washington. My father was chairman of the broadcasting department at the University of Florida. University of Florida. What's the Florida State stuff? Who said Florida State? Bill Page said that. It's University of Florida, Bill. That's okay, but it's the University of Florida. Florida State is called FSCW, Florida State College for Women. It used to be a girls' school. It is still a girls' school. Okay? Under the direction of a graduate student, Joe DeSantis, a group of you put together we'll call a radio program called the Paper Chase, right? Paper Chase. It was about getting a college education and the importance of it. Jeff Tellis was the president of the Intercollegiate Broadcast System at the time, and he came out to Edinburgh one afternoon from New York City and said, "You guys need to come to Washington and be at our national banquet, awards dinner." the intercollegiate broadcast system. All the radio station in college radio. Your station and the staff and you need to come to Washington. So I didn't ask him why. I kind of wondered. We got there. We were in the news production slot, and there were 3 stations up for the award nationally. Edinburgh State College, the University of Florida. So I have a hard time getting through this one. My dad's school, my father's broadcast department. A PhD guy. He always answered the phone, Mr. Christiansen. I didn't understand that at the time. He didn't have signs in his office or degree programs or things that touted him as a person. But I realize now, watching my father, how to treat people. And I realize now, I guess I've tried to do that all my life too. And you guys gave me a chance to have that laboratory experience in life. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. It's overwhelming. I love you all. I know my parents are proud. I'm so proud to be here with you. And thank you. And I'm doing this stuff because I've had some surgeries on my hips. So I'm fine. It's just that I'm not running and jumping and doing that. Okay. And you want to get the picture now? Bring it up. Can we do that now? Can we do this with the Campbells? Do the Campbell picture? Yes or no? Is that okay, or do you want to wait for later? Okay. These people were mentioned by somebody's comments. This is Kenny Campbell and Sue, and did anybody remember Sue's maiden name? Sue Waters. Susie Waters. They, huh? Sue Freshwater. Okay. They fell in love at FSE, like some other have done at FSE, the old Frails. And if you knew Kenny, he was a light of the life. He showed, every time he walked into the room changed. He was just that a sparkable person. On March 14th of this summer, Kenny passed away. He was 64 years old. Well, when I learned that and I saw his age, I was shocked that my student was 64. He had been in a hospital. I learned for a long time. At the same time, his wife of 40 years was in a different hospital. They couldn't even be in the same hospitals because of the difference of the treatment need medically. We can figure it out that when he passed in, they weren't together. He was alone, she was alone. She is still in the hospital. If you go to Facebook and message Sue, you will find a picture of Sue in a hospital bed, in a hospital gown, with a hose in her nose. She's still there. I was moved by that experience, and I thought, I wanted to do something. I thought I still played the cello. So I proposed playing a song in tribute to these people tonight. It's called Where You Walk by Handel. And I wanted to change the title of the song to Where We Walked, as appropriate for the evening. My cello needs help. Some very gracious people brought another one over. It wasn't going to work. But I had an idea that with all these people here, many of you knew these people, had this picture. Sue sent me this picture. Took it to Walmart, did you? Had it blown up. I said, let's put a big border around it. Because what I want to do is have you all sign it. Say something to Sue, please. If you remember her, acquaintance to the staff at FSE, I'm going to record the song I wanted to record and add it to the tape we're making tonight. And I want to take the recording of us all here tonight and what you signed tonight and take it to her hospital bed and try to lift her life a little bit. So please help us sign for that purpose, and I appreciate that very much. Okay? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Love you all.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, everyone, for all the reminiscing on years past at Edinburgh. I'm Tim Thompson, for those who don't know me. I've been here since 1990, and the place has changed a little bit. But I still do remember just getting here, and I remember some of the people who welcomed me, like Bill Page and Glynis Claffey. She was there, who's now Glynis Fitzgerald. She was there in the radio station when I first interviewed here, met her, and she showed me around. And of course, Melissa Gibson, one of my star students in those early days. But I also remember some of the faculty who made me feel very, very welcome here. And that includes one of the greatest friendship duos of all time, Dr. Gary Christiansen and Dr. Bob Wallace. And many of you, of course, knew them. What a pair they were. And I'll tell you, they did make me feel very, very welcome, me coming with my sweet mullet at that time. And one of the first events that I attended here was something that Gary put together. And, you know, it got mentioned as the place for the wedding earlier, but the Riverside Inn was the site of a banquet in the early 90s that Gary organized and put on in celebration of WFSE and in celebration of all of you. And this event, what an event. You just don't do that anymore. I mean, we got there and alcohol was free. What? Who does that? But you did it. And, of course, you had Tom Ridge, the governor at the time, was at the event. All the greatest food, Riverside, on the river there. What a beautiful, beautiful memory that was. Yeah, and one of the anniversaries. And as we're approaching a new anniversary. And then Bob Wallace, of course, had some of the greatest Christmas parties you could imagine at his house. And I'll tell you what, some great scotches up there. And of course, Brian carries on the scotch tasting legacy of Bob Wallace. So, and speaking of that, we will have a scotch tasting as part of the Highland Games this year that I hope you all can come. It's nice. But those two, Gary and Bob, were dear friends when I first came to Edinboro, and they made the transition easy to coming here. And what we want to do is, we've been talking about the past and celebrating the past of WFSE, but we also want to look toward the future. And what we want to do is, we're taking an existing scholarship, the Dr. Bob Wallace Scholarship, and we're blending it with his dearest friend, Gary Christiansen, and we're creating the Dr. Bob Wallace and Dr. Gary Christiansen Communication Scholarship. So those dear friends can live on in legacy, and I'll tell you what, it's important for that too. We do have, if you're at all interested, there are forms, just like there's the photo to sign for Kenny Campbell, but there's also a WFSE logo to be signed by everyone here. I hope you do. And if you're interested at all in that scholarship, we have paper forms to carry away, but the form is also available online for you to give to that communication scholarship for our students going. But we also have more in store. So with me tonight is our student who you've met before, Ben Calmy. He's going to tell you about a sign project that we have going on with WFSE and Dr. Gary Christiansen.
Hi guys, I'm back again. So, as I said earlier, I am the promotions director for 88.9 WFSE. And this semester, I wanted to find a way to not only promote our station, but to give back. And so, one day, I'm driving in my car, and I'm racking my brain. How can we both simultaneously promote our great station and solidify its legacy within our town at the same time? And I'm driving past the library, and in the recent years, they've put one of those metal historical markers up. And I'm like, wait a second. We've made history. We're continuing to make history. Why don't we have a sign? And so this last semester, I actually had a feasibility study class from Dr. Gibson. And so I took a lot of the stuff that I learned from our feasibility study class, and I found out all of the information that goes into creating one of these signs, and I brought it back to our current WFSE team, and they said, go. Run with the idea. Let's do this. So that brings us to where we are today. So outside of Compton Hall, we want to have a sign that commemorates both Dr. Gary Christiansen and 88.9 WFSE. So it will read, the title will be 88.9 WFSE. Founded by Dr. Gary Christiansen, 88.9 WFSE Fighting Scots Radio has been servicing the Edinboro and surrounding areas since 1979. Shortly after, in 1981, the station's operating power was increased to 3,000 watts, allowing WFSE to reach an even larger audience. Continuing its legacy, WFSE allows students to express their ideas and creativity across the airwaves. Be sure to turn your radio to 88.9 to enjoy student-driven content all day long. And so, thank you. And so getting one of these signs is actually no small feat. We reached out to the Edinboro Area Historical Society, and we got all of the information in regards to this. And so tonight, I would like to announce our fundraising campaign to get this sign paid for our 50th year anniversary of 50 years on the airwaves in 2029. Our first fundraising event will be a t-shirt event. If anybody would like to buy a new t-shirt, we'll have those links up soon, and they will be on our alumni Facebook group. We had local graphic designers design new shirts for WFSE, and they're great. So, but yeah, thank you.
Well, we really want to thank everybody for coming tonight. You've made this so special, and I'm glad that you could get together to celebrate Gary. And Gary, I'm glad that you were with us to be here tonight. That this is so special, and it's been such a long time coming. And as so many people mentioned, you know, we've owed this to you for quite a while. And you've been one of the greats in radio, and of course one of the greats in the Edinburgh and the Erie area in radio. And we celebrate you. And I'll tell you what, I'm honored to be with you here tonight. Thank you, Gary. Thanks, everyone. Now we're going to, if you want to take a photo with Gary or take some photos and enjoy, please sign the photos, and we'll see you. Enjoy.
Is this thing on? Okay, so for those of you who don't know, my name's Bill Page, and I had the honor of being with Gary for 4 years, as many of you did. Gary had this project that he wanted for the Campbells, and it was so important to him on his night that he paid respects to Kenny and Susan Campbell. And I had no idea how much it meant to him until I saw it in his eyes, and how just the joy he got about his students. So on a night that is about Gary, he wanted to make sure that former students were honored. So please, everyone who's here tonight, for everyone who's not here, who's watching on the streaming, please sign this before you leave. Just put something down, put your name. If you're a current student, a former student, or anything, just sign it around the border. As much as that meant a lot to Gary, this means so much to all the students who aren't here tonight, and those of us who are here. Please, just put something down. Let's fill the border up for Dr. Christiansen. Thank you for everything, Gary, over the years. We love you.